All right. So today we're on Lab 9 on forecasting, and I just want to tell you a little bit about what forecasting is. Although some people use forecasting and predicting interchangeably, I try to shy away from that because when you use the word predict, it has the connotation that you're going to be able to tell what's going to happen, that you can predict the future. What we can do is forecast, and we can forecast with a certain amount of accuracy, but it's never going to be 100% accurate. I mean, that's just common sense, right? And so when we're looking at all of these, what we want to try to do is use both a time series, cross-sectional, and longitudinal data to try to make our predictions. The idea here is that we want to look at what's happened in the past, the time series. We want to look at what's happening today, the cross-sectional, and then we want to look at certain points at each point along the way, the longitudinal data, to try to make our prediction. So let me give you the technical definitions, right? And you see the time series is a series of data points indexed in a time order. January, February, March, April, May, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or 2010, 2011, 2012, so on and so forth, right? So generally, it's important that in your time series, they're taken successively and that they're equally spaced, right? And because they're equally spaced, that generally means that they're discrete time. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's what we're trying to do, right? Cross-sectional is generally something that we look at that has just a cross-section or a representative subset of the population at a specific point in time. So the time series data, think of that like a movie or a video. Cross-sectional data is a snapshot of the same thing. Longitudinal data is when you put the movie and the snapshot together. You take snapshots, put them into a book, and then as you're moving through time, you can see the snapshots and how each one of them happened over time. Longitudinal data is also called panel data, right? Because we put together a series of panels, if you will, over each of the successive time frames. Now, at the core of the whole process, at the core of what we're doing is this idea of risk and uncertainty. Because again, even though we're forecasting what's going to happen, we cannot be 100% accurate. Even in a controlled environment, we're never going to be 100% accurate. And so what I want to do then is talk to you about the difference between risk and uncertainty, right? Risk is just the possibility of a loss or possibility of an adverse or unwelcome circumstance. Things didn't go according to plan, okay? Uncertainty is situations where you have imperfect information. So maybe we're looking at future events, we don't know what's going to happen. Even in the past, we don't know what actually did happen. We know what we have been told happened. We know what the data show, but we don't always know 100% if that data is accurate. We don't know what other data have been hidden from us. So using this whole thing about the COVID-19 process and what's going on, there was a story on NPR yesterday or the day before that was talking about how one of the biggest issues is that a lot of the agencies in the struggle to overcome the disease have forgotten proper data collection strategies and data organization. And so sometimes the data are getting mixed up and people are being reported that have died when they really haven't. Some people are getting mixed up and instead of being male or female or whatever, they put the wrong gender, the wrong age, the wrong county, so on and so forth. So the data, even if we have good data, the data are not going to be 100% perfect. And that leads us to this idea of uncertainty, right? So now I want to open up the idea to you that risk and uncertainty, while they go hand in hand, they are not the same thing, okay? Risk is this idea that you are exposed to a loss. Uncertainty is kind of why you're being exposed to that loss. Does that make sense? Okay. So my question to you is, right, which of these two, risk or uncertainty, do you think that you can calculate and account for?
Risk.
Okay, so you're right. You can calculate and account for the risk, right? The uncertainty is what you don't know. The risk you do know, you can base it on other situations and you can calculate that risk, right? So that's correct. Risk can be accounted for, uncertainty cannot. So you're going to learn a little bit more about that so the risk and uncertainty part we go over in project management. You're going to learn in depth how to calculate some of that risk. As a matter of fact, there are entire classes on risk and uncertainty if you choose to take them, right? Not at Lynn, but in your graduate programs or whatever that you might do. So a couple of things before we dive into Tableau. When you're forecasting in Tableau, there's a couple of things you need to know. First, at least one date or dimension with an integer value has to be on the x-axis, okay? A date or dimension with an integer value has to be on the x-axis. Second, there has to be at least one measure on the y-axis, okay? So that makes sense, right? You have to have an x and a y, but what I'm saying is that it has to be an integer value on the x-axis for us to be able to properly forecast. And that goes back to this idea of the time series being indexed in time order. So because it has to be in successive equally spaced points, that's why we have to have integer values on the x-axis. In addition to that, for Tableau to properly forecast, it has to have at least 5 data points. And if it's seasonal data, it has to be at least 2 seasons, okay? This is because it uses a model called the Holt-Winters model, and that requires it have at least 5 data points. In addition, you can't have qubits or cubes, totals, calculations, so on and so forth, because those are calculated fields. So they calculate the data first and then forecast. And you can't have Tableau calculate and then forecast. You can calculate it yourself and then put the data in, but you can't say calculate this and then forecast based on that. That becomes an if-then statement, and that starts to bog down the system, makes everything kind of screwy. So you can't do it that way. All right. So before we move forward, do we have any questions, or are we good on those concepts so far? Right. All right. So we're pretty good on that. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to move over here to how we actually create a forecast. Right. And so again, we're going to take some of the concepts that we've learned and we're going to actually use those to create a forecast. Before I move forward, can everybody fully see the screen here? Y'all are good with that? Right? Okay. Looks like everybody's fine then. All right. Okay. So let's move forward with it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our global superstore, good old global superstore, right? And we're going to forecast forward, and we're going to use that to create a profit projection of what we think the profits are going to be within the next couple of years. All right. So the first thing we want to do is come over and we want to take our measure. We're going to drag the profit to the rows. All right. Drag profit to the rows. All right. Next thing we want to do is we're going to drag the order date over here in the dimensions. We're going to drag order date to the columns, and we're going to leave that as a year. So what we've just done is taken the profit and said, how is the profit increasing year over year? So right now, from 2012 to 2015, our profits have doubled, right? So we went from 249 million to 504 million in just 3 years. So that's pretty good, right? That's a company that I think I would invest in so far. Next thing we want to do is we're going to click on the Analytics tab. So the Analytics tab is at the top. See where it says Data and then Analytics right above the Global Superstore. So I'm over in this area right here. I'm going to click on Analytics. And then we're going to take the forecast and we're going to drag that over into the middle. And when you do, you can see that it says, what do you want to do? You want to add a forecast. You just pop it on top of the box. So one more time, right? Analytics, forecast, drag it to the data, and then just pop it on top of the box. Okay? All right. So now you can see that we have a forecast being built here. So the forecast is based on a 95% confidence interval by default. You can change that if you choose to, which we'll do down the road, okay? But right now we can say that we are 95% confident that the actual is going to be between the upper confidence band and the lower confidence band, also known as the UCL, upper confidence level, and LCL, lower confidence level, right? If we hover over the line, we can also see where we predict or forecast that our profits will be 1 year from now. So in 2015, we know that it's going to be 503, about 504 million. We predict that that's going to increase to 584 million as we move forward. All right. Number 5 says we're going to right click on the prediction interval, select forecast, and describe forecast. So what that means is we're going to come to the prediction interval up here, right click, forecast, okay, and describe our forecast. So when we describe the forecast, that will pop up a bunch of information for us to show us how all of this pulls together. The first thing we're going to do is we see that the time series is on year of order date. So we know this is time series data. We also see that the measure that we're forecasting on is the sum of profits. We also see that it's using 5 quarters. We said we're going to use years, but it went back and said, okay, I have to have at least 5 data points. There's not 5 years here, so I'm going to break it down into quarters. So Tableau did that automatically without you having to tell it to do so. And it's basing that on 2012 Q1 through 2015 Q3. Now, we have the data to be able to pull that into pretty much anything we want, and I'll show you how to do that later. It also ignored the last quarter. That is a constraint that Tableau has built in because of the way it forecasts. And it sees a seasonal pattern. So it tells me that there's a 4-quarter cycle. Now, we already knew that when we were putting in a line chart. We saw that there was a cyclical pattern. The sales went up in the 4th quarter and back down in the 1st, and back up to the 4th quarter and back down in the 1st. So that is the cyclical pattern that it's picking up on. The part down here what says sum of profits, what that's looking at is the initial number plus or minus 42 million. So it takes the Q4 number that's here, and it says the sum of profits plus or minus 42 million to get that initial confidence band. It then forecasts on the change. How is it moving from the 4th quarter to the 4th quarter here, and tells me how am I pulling that in. And so there's a change of 31 or $32 million. So instead of you having to come here and take those numbers, calculate it yourself, it tells you what the rate of change is for you. It also tells me what the seasonal effect is. So again, it tells me Q4 is the high season, Q1 is the low season. So that's telling me what that cyclical pattern or seasonal pattern is. Finally, it tells me which of these has the best or highest contribution. It's telling me that the overall trend as we go from 2012 to 2016 is more important than the seasonal trend. If I were to pull that into quarters, it would tell you what the seasonal trend is. So it's telling me that the overall trend is more important to the model than the seasonal trend. And the last thing we see is that the quality of this is good. So somewhere in your notes, jot down that the way it looks at this is there's 3 estimates, right? It's a good model, it's an okay model, and it's an unacceptable model. Good means that the forecasting model is more than 2/3, more than 67%. So that tells me then that this model is accurate to at least 67%, okay? All right. So if we wanted to dig a little deeper, we could come here and click model and it would tell me what we've done. We're going to go over this stuff in a different tab, so you don't have to really know too much about it right now. Okay. So we've got the root mean squared error. That's the calculating forecast, and you're going to learn how in operations management, you're going to learn how that's actually calculated. But basically what it does is it takes the difference between the actual and the forecast, squares it, takes the, so that's where the square part comes in. Then it takes the average, that is where the mean comes in, then takes the square root. So it's the root of the mean squared error, right? Then this is the maximum or the mean absolute error, mean absolute squared error, mean absolute percentage error, and I forgot what AIC is, okay? Somebody look up what AIC is for forecasting and put it in the notes for us. All right, so as we're moving forward, now we're on line 6. We're going to change the mark type to a circle to get a point and whisker plot. So that's what we're going to have down here. If we come, instead of automatic, we're going to pull that down and we're going to make it circle. So we want this to tell us what these error bands are for each quarter. So we're going to come here, pull that into the circle. All right. So now we can see here at 2012, 2013, these are actuals. So for the numbers 2012, 2013, 2014, we have the actual data. 2015, it says, okay, this is the actual with an upper and lower confidence interval. And then here in our forecast, it has a much wider cone. As you move forward in your prediction, so if you go from 2016 to 2017, this band will get wider. You're all Floridians now, and if you've been through at least one hurricane, we count you as an honorary Floridian. And so, as a matter of fact, I think Mr. Parker is the only actual Floridian we have, right? Everybody else is transplanted from somewhere else. So this is like the cone of uncertainty in a hurricane forecast. It puts everything it can in there and then takes into account the fact that the further away you go, the further out from actually hitting your targets, the more uncertain you're going to be in the process. Okay. Now, so what we've done is we basically said, here's each of our points, right? And as we move forward, it gives us this larger cone of uncertainty. All right. So if you want a little bit more information about that, you can click on the link below and it'll tell you what exponential smoothing is all about. This page actually shows you how to do it in Python if you're interested in that. And if you're in the data analytics major or minor, you're going to end up taking a course in Python or R, depending on who's teaching the course at the time. And there's a YouTube video that shows you about that as well if you want to take a look at that. All right. So before we move to the next tab, do we have any questions or are we good? All right. Okay. Week seems to be good. So if nobody's going to, if nobody chimes in, I'm going to assume that we're okay. All right. So.
How did you get to the having this 5 circles, the 5 uncertainty?
Okay. So we came to the marks, pulled that down, and instead of letting it be automatic, we said make it a circle. So right now we have like a band of uncertainty. We're going to put the circle there, and it makes it into like a point and whisker, right?
Right.
Got it?
Gotcha.
Okay. And by the way, while we're here, I also want to point out that if you look at your pill and you see this little up arrow, that indicates that this is actually a forecasted projection. That is not the actual. So the sum of the profits here has been forecasted for us. Okay? All right. So let's come over here now and we're going to look at our shipping costs, because we have found that in the past, we know that the shipping department is having issues. We know that when they're shipping out those tables, one of the reasons why the tables are eating into our profits is because the shipping costs are way too high. And so we have to come through here and we have to think about how we're going to fix all of that, okay? And in order for us to do that, we want to analyze our shipping costs and we're going to use them to try to see what's going to happen in the future. So the first thing we want to do before we do all this, because we know we're going to end up with a rather complex system, we need to figure out not just by the year, but we want to know what our monthly data show. So we're going to take the ship date, right? We're going to come back over here to the data tab, and we're going to take the ship date, and we're going to drag that to the filters. And when we do, we have this box come up. So let me do that one more time. Take ship date, drag it to the filters. And we're going to use the field that says month, right? And I said month, but it's months. Okay. Click next, select all, apply, click OK. All right. Now, before we even get there, if we hover over the middle, right, you can see that it's already telling me we're going to end up forecasting. Now, the reason for that is because as I was building the lab, I had the forecast already built in there. So we're going to look at the quality and the scale to make sure that we have a solid understanding. Okay. All right. Next thing is we want to drag the ship date to the columns and select by month. So the ship date here, and we're going to drag ship date to the column. So let's go ahead and do that. And because it's on month here, we're going to want it to be on month here as well, right? And the way we do that is we pull the arrow down. Now, if you click here, it's going to give you quarters and then months, and you have to take the quarter out. So instead of doing that, we're just going to pull this down, and we're going to tell it from here on out, we want to focus on the month. So pull down the right arrow, month. And now it's given us the dates that we have. Take the shipping cost to the rows and select the sum. So we're going to come here to my shipping cost to the rows, and we want it to be the sum of the shipping cost. Right off the bat, before we even get started doing anything else, you can clearly see that we have a problem in the shipping department. As we move through from January to December, now this is all of the January through Decembers aggregated together. So it's like January of 2012 through December, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015 added together, and then December of all of those years as well. So we know that as we move forward, our shipping costs go up. That's to be expected, however, because we know our busy season is in the fourth quarter. So we expect a rise, but what we're seeing is that the cost is going up every year. And so we need to figure out if there's a way for us to take control of that. Okay. So we're going to take the cost, drag it to the rows and select sum. Then we're going to forecast, right? On the forecast table, where was that? Let me remember where that is. Okay. Let me remember how I did that.
It was in analytics before.
I can't hear you, son.
It was in analytics before. You have to drag the forecast in the table.
We can't understand you. You're going to have to type it out for us. Okay. I did slip my mind. So I'm going to wait and remember how we did this. Track shipping costs of the rows and select sum, then forecast. Oh. All right, sum. By the way, I know that you guys are all over the place, and so if the quality of the video or whatever doesn't actually pop up, I'm going to figure out some other things to do, right? Maybe actually go through and do a YouTube video in advance, and that way we'll have all of this. And we won't have a lot of the other things, the pops and hitches and glitches and so on and so forth. So, okay. Did you figure it out, Volumes? No.
Okay.
I forgot how to do this. I'm sorry that I forgot how to do this. Drag the shipping cost to the rows. We did that, right? Then select forecast actual. Forecast was analytics. Yes, I know, but it's not highlighted now. See, so that's my problem. So let me think on this for a minute. Remind myself how I did this. Oh, let me start over with the process. I'm gonna have to start writing this stuff down, right? Track shipping cost to the rows. And then we're gonna forecast actual and forecast. Why am I not remembering this, guys? This is bothering me. Yeah. All right. So we're going to come back to that one. I'll figure this one out, but we'll come back to this. Okay. So we're going to take the shipping cost and we're going to drag it to the tooltip. All right. It may be the reason why I can't find it. It may be. All right. So what'd you do? Yeah. See, I can't have that. It doesn't give me the actual and the estimate there. When I drag that up, it may be because I left this and I've already got that in there. Usually that when you don't, okay. Because the date cannot be derived from the fields in this view. It's right there. So I have messed up something. Let me just power through this and see if I can come out on the other side with something that I need. So we're going to drag the shipping cost to the tooltip. All right. All right. And then we're going to use the pull down menu. We want to do the quality, okay, of this. See, and now, so I'm not getting what I need from this. And so that's being a problem for me. All right. So when in doubt, start over, right? So I must have skipped a step somewhere. So let me go back and we will put them all back in. So we're going to take the ship date, filter that on the months, right? Select all, apply, click OK. Drag the ship date to the columns and select by month. Shipping date to the column, where is it? Ship date to the columns. And select on month. Okay. Everything else is fine. Drag shipping cost to the rows. And then when I pull that down, I don't get my measure. Right, so why am I coming over here and I can't do my forecast? What is my error telling me? Can't be added because the date cannot be derived from the field in the view. Any ideas on that, folks? Let me go back to year, which does not give me, so now it allows me to forecast. So maybe I just did them out of order. All right, okay. But now, see, when I put that back on there, it won't let me forecast. So actual and forecast. All right, so to get everybody back to where I am, and I'm sure you guys didn't have this problem because you know what you're doing, right? What I did is I put this here, so I'm going to put the shipping cost in first, then, right, I'm going to, excuse me, I clicked the wrong button. Then I'm going to put the month in, right, and I'm going to pull that down and make it on. Right, so now I can pull in a forecast, which I've already done. And then when I switch it to month, it gives me that. So that's where I want it to be. All right. I don't know what happened there. I must have just clicked something incorrectly and what, maybe did I put, when I was dragging this over here, was I dragging shipping date or order date? Do y'all remember? Because I'm supposed to pull the ship date in, and I might have been putting the order date. But anyway, we're going to move forward. because this is where we need to be. Okay, so that's the problem then. It's supposed to be on the shipping date, and was I telling y'all the order date? So that's my mess up. My bad, right? I don't know. I didn't have enough coffee this morning, I guess, right? So maybe I need to take another sip. All right, so let's move forward. Okay. So we're going to take the shipping cost as we've done, and we're going to drag that. This is where this comes from, right? So we're going to take the shipping cost, drag that to that thing that I just did. I don't want to do shipping cost and drag it to the tooltip. Okay. We're going to use that pull down menu. We want the quality of this result. So we want the quality for the shipping cost. Okay. We're going to do it again, and we're going to look for the precision. So what we're going to end up with is the actual and the forecast, what we have. Then we're going to have the quality and the precision all in one. We're going to take the quality again, shipping cost again, and we're going to drag that again to the tooltip. Okay. And then we're going to forecast, and this time we're going to look at the precision, not precision percentage. That's a little bit different. Okay. All right. All right. We're going to take the shipping cost now. Before we do that, let's click on the marks and select line. I've got mine on automatic, so it becomes a line. We're going to select marks and make sure that it's actually a line chart, which it is, but we just want to double check and make sure that it doesn't change. Okay. And so now we're going to drag the shipping cost to the color. Okay. And now you can see here that we have this pane where the shipping cost as it increases goes across. This is going to change in just a moment. Okay. We're going to take that pull down menu from pull down menu, select forecast indicator, right? Okay, so, okay. For the labels, we're going to take the show marked labels, and here, this is an interesting concept. I don't know if I was able to show you. Why can't I do this? Why is this giving me a hard time? So for the label here, we're going to click the label and make sure you have the show marked labels. Okay, and we want to make sure we have the, got it? Show the mark labels, right? So we're going to mark the labels is what we're doing. And what we're going to mark is the minimum and the maximum, okay? Before, if you have all, that's what you have. What we want is the minimum and the maximum. We got the max over here. We got the min way down here below the label. And then we click OK. So we've got the min, we've got the max, and we know we can use that to predict what the change is going to be, or the rate of change. We're going to take this now, we're going to add a trend line. So we're going to right click, trend line, show trend lines. Okay. Now, you'll notice that we have one solid trend line here for the entire process. Okay. And we want to say how much has each one of them changed. And I think this number is correct, right? So when I did this last night, my data was a little different. I changed the data, so it's going to be a little different. But when it says by how much have our shipping costs increased from 2012 to 2016, the answer comes from the slope where it says 21.9149 times the month. Okay, so it's 21.9149. So I'm going to come here and make sure that we change that. Right. So that's 21.949 million per month. Remember, the numbers are in thousands. Okay. All right. Okay, Sierra, take care. All right. And then it says, how do we estimate our shipping cost to increase? How much will the shipping cost increase from 2016 to 2017? And the answer for that is we're just going to take the difference between where it was, right, where it is, and say, okay, this is the difference in how much it increased. The next thing we ask is how accurate is that forecast? And the answer, again, the data are different for me. So the answer is the R squared number. So it's about 68% accurate. So let me go change that too, right? So that is, okay, devil, right? I got the numbers transposed, all right? Okay, so far so good? All right. Okay, so I want to leave the last 3 minutes here before we go on to the next one, and we'll finish this up on Wednesday and Friday too, if necessary, right? So, and I want to leave the last few minutes here for any questions that you might have. There's only 3 of us, but if you have any questions, let me know.
Can you go back to the point where you added the trend line?
Okay, so do you have the trend line in there or no?
No.
Okay.
I was still trying to figure out the forecast. I mean, I was listening, but I was still trying to figure out the.
Gotcha. That's okay. So you have this, all right?
Yes, I just got.
Okay. So we're going to right click, trend line, show trend lines. Okay. And so it gives us the flat point here. When I click off of that, the gray line becomes my trend line.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you wanted?
Yes.
Okay.
So
And that's where we're getting those numbers. See the R squared and the slope of the line? All right. So the slope tells me the rate of change. The R squared tells me the accuracy of the model.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Matthew, do you two have a question? I can't hear you, son.
No.
What'd you say, Volues? Yes, that's the plan. We're going to try to finish it on Wednesday. Okay. And if necessary, we'll finish it on Friday too. Okay. I'm going to try my best. I don't know what's going to happen because like I said, I'm doing the roof. And if they're pounding on the roof, I'm definitely not going to try to make videos. Okay. So, all right. So from there, we will figure it out. Okay. So if you guys need anything else, you let me know. And Uloma, if you need, let me know, and I will go back over this with you. I have another class in 10 minutes, but I will go back over this with you. Okay?
Okay.
All right. All right. So without further ado, I will talk